Welcome.
Great intro.
I found that music here on YouTube, but it's been such an epic opening all the time.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Welcome to Vintage VSF Live, Vintage Science Fiction Live. I'm here with Jon, the sci-fi scavenger. Welcome, Jon.
Good afternoon, Richard. How are you?
I'm great. I don't know. That always psychs me up. So I'm always enjoying that myself, getting into the video.
Yeah.
And Jon and I, we started channels very within a week of each other. So we have often kind of got together, and it's great to have someone over in the UK connecting with a guy here in Canada and talking science fiction. Last time we were on your channel, and it was the SF book duel. I really enjoyed that.
Dramatic. Yeah, it was good fun. I really enjoyed it too.
Yeah, there's a link in the below in this video description if you would like to find that one. You want to just tell them briefly what that was about?
Gosh, I selected a handful of categories, and then we each picked our favorite book in that category, or sometimes more than one, and then talk nonsense about them for an hour and a half. I think, if I remember rightly, it was really nice. Good chat.
Yeah. And we're going to be, before I talk about today's topic that we have here, I'll just say hi to a few people here. Let's see what we got here. Jake from Pulp Mortem. The answer is yes. Because we have a question, but
yes, indeed.
Yes. Yeah. Are audiobooks reading? We'll get to that. Welcome, Rob. Thanks for dropping by. If you can't stay, of course, you can watch later. Hello, Seth. And they're saying hi to each other there. And hello also from Tom. Welcome.
Hey, Tom.
All right. So last week I had a video. I've had a couple of videos that have these questions that are sort of to ignite conversation. And it was, is science fiction as a genre dead? Which, of course, it's not. But for writers, were they trying to escape that back shelf in the bookstore and trying to break out more into mainstream, more sales? And are there more writers who are in the mainstream now who don't even think that they're science fiction? So I talked a little bit about that, but what happened is we had this comment. He wanted to ask a question, Vermilion Sands, outside the video. Does anyone else's heart sink when a friend, when asked, says, yes, I've read that book, but then goes on to say it was an audiobook? And do audiobooks count as actual reading? Maybe it's my age. And I said, I'm planning to talk about this in a couple of weeks. And you came in and you got, of course it did, was the first answer there that you had at the bottom. Of course it does. And then you had also the thing I always think about is this question arises is Braille. We wouldn't say a blind person touched a book. We'd say they read it, just not with their eyes. Audiobooks are the same for me. They all count. You want to say a little bit something about how this comment ignited you and what you wanted to say?
Well, I just think some people, I'm not singling out Vermilion Sands in particular here, but
no.
frequent
you know what, I have some of the feelings he had, and I'll talk about that.
Yeah. But I think, we could all be pedantic about it and say, well, of course, if you're listening to an audiobook, then you can't possibly rereading it. Reading it is quite specific, has quite a specific meaning, and it means using your eyes to scan words on a page or something similar. An ebook would count too. So there's no arguing that that's true. And in fact, I was talking to my daughter about this earlier this evening, and her response was, well, of course it's not reading because you're listening to it. And I said, okay, but in 6 months' time, if someone asked you if you'd read that book, you'd say yes. You wouldn't say, no, I didn't read it, I listened to it. So it's a strange thing. I think, historically, reading meant reading a physical book because that was the only option that there was available to you. And so if you go back far enough, pre-ebooks and pre-Braille and pre-audiobooks. And so it carries a freight of meaning, and I think it's a convenient shorthand to refer to the consumption of books of all kinds, whether they're bumps on a page, or ebooks or audiobooks, or however else stone tablets, for all I care. So you've consumed the book, but we don't say that because it's clumsy. We just say you've read it. So that's my in summary, my thoughts on the subject.
I think it's a secondary definition potentially, right? It's just the have you experienced the book?
Yeah.
And that's what reading is. You don't want to say that to somebody else. Have you listened, read, or touched with the braille to read a book? You're not going to say that.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But there's no arguing that it's a different sense, and that I'm sure the brain potentially processes in a different way, and it's a different experience too. I'm sure we'll talk about that.
What's interesting though is there was a Harvard Gazette article that I read before just a couple days ago in preparing for this, where there was an experiment where they had MRIs to see about the parts of the brain that lit up with reading or with listening. And they were looking after the fact, not during the event itself, but they were the same areas, which was probably not predicted, because it's about how our mind translates the word, whether we hear it or whether we see it. And so in that way, they're both reading, definitely. So yeah. Now, the other part is, as different forms of media, there's different ways that they're consumed. And so here's where I felt a little bit on Vermilion's side on this one. I don't read or I don't listen to a lot of books, but I have listened in the car to a number of books on longer trips. And I tried recently with working out and walking to start listening to books as well. There is a component, I think, that people are thinking about when they say that listening is not reading. And that component is we tend to multitask when we're listening, but not when we're reading. And I think that affects our reading.
Well, it's an argument that's just because you can. And so like you, I quite often listen to audiobooks when I'm out. I walk into the station when I go to the office, or out running, more likely. And I obviously couldn't read a book whilst I was doing that, because I would run into a tree or something. So, I think it's true that not all of less of your attention, because there's only so much of navigation that you can do on autopilot when you're walking or whatever. You're paying some attention to what you're doing. And so I guess, but that's probably still true when you're reading a book these days. You're not, your eyes traverse the room or whatever, get distracted by something that's going on in the background. But I get around that potential for distraction by mostly, it's not exclusive, Richard, but mostly listening to books that I've already read. So I already mostly am familiar with them, even if it's been some time back. It's not, I'm not, because it's a reread, I'm not so worried about paying 110% attention whilst I'm doing it.
That was a question I was going to have for you, because I think that I retain, or I can be more careful and retain or scan back a little bit when I'm reading, whereas listening, that potential multitasking of what you're doing. I mean, you could lie back in bed and listen and be very focused into something, although I might fall asleep. But I don't think I would try to take a complicated book and try to read it or listen to it for the first time. I think I'd have a difficulty with that.
Well, I've just discovered that exact problem. I'm going to reach for the physical book that happens to be to hand. So this was on my, well, it actually wasn't on my list of books to read during May, but I picked up anyway to listen to an audiobook in anticipation of having plenty of time, because I had one of my long distance races and I was going to be out on the trails for 24 hours plus. So I thought, well, I'll be able to make a good dent in it, and I did. But it's a 54 hour listen if you listen to the whole thing. So it's a chunky book as well, 1,200 pages. Intriguing. And I think It's translated from Polish, and the translation's excellent. Not at all clunky. Sometimes it can be, but because it's a Polish book, there are some unfamiliar names and unfamiliar terms, and it's a sort of science fictional setting, so I kind of add that jargon to the whole thing, and it was quite a trial to listen to it. So I've not picked it up since I finished that race, because I haven't had the opportunity to pick up an audiobook again, but I think I might finish it in the physical, because for that reason it's a little bit of an earful.
Yeah.
If you're doing something else, I mean, I find it very hard to just sit and listen to an audiobook in the house. I'd much rather be reading a physical book, honestly, if I was going to do that. So I treat audiobook listening as a bit of a cheat code to get through one or two extra books that I wouldn't otherwise have the chance to read during the month.
I think that's where I tend to look towards maybe more of a bestseller or popcorn type book.
Yeah.
I recently listened while I was working out and walking, trying to do that extra book in there, to Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. I think that's a pseudonym for, here, I'll throw it up on here, for Stacy Cade, I believe. And as you can see here, a ghost ship, a salvage crew, unspeakable horrors. It's basically a luxury ship, Titanic, lost in space, that they come across, and a captain who has trauma in her past, and they come onto the ship and they see some horrible things have happened to the crew, and it goes on from there. Because it was a kind of a book that kept repeating parts of the premise and continued to try to delve into this trauma of this pilot, it kept repeating itself in some ways. And so I found it easy to listen to. Now, I'm not sure I would recommend this book to people, because I found it almost too reiterative. Is that the right word? And using a lot of tropes that have been used many, many times. But I was able to listen to it, get through it, and go, I was fine without having to physically put that in front of my eyes and have an idea what that's about. I don't know if I could do, as we were talking about, do that the same with the culture books. We were just talking about those earlier. Have you been listening to any of the culture books? I guess you've probably read them all, right? So
yeah, that's it. So some of them more than once prior to a sort of deliberate, quite a lengthy period of time, over about 15 months, a reread of the whole series. I think in all cases on audiobook, but because I've read them once, twice, three times in some cases before, that was completely fine. You know, it was a great way to remind myself how great those books were. Actually, on the subject of books that were a bit chewy for audiobook, I found, particularly if you're busy doing something else at the same time, was Neuromancer. I was advised that I shouldn't listen to it on audiobook, and I should read the physical book. And it pains me to say it, but I think it was Steve, Outlaw Bookseller, that was entreating me to read it properly in his terms. So it pains me to say that he was right, but I think he probably was. It was I probably didn't get as much from it listening to it for the first time on audiobook as I may have done. I mean, we'll never know. I can't do a controlled experiment of just me, but I suspect I probably would have got more from it reading the physical book. So when I do come to reread it, that one is one I'll read in physical book.
I have that problem with House of Suns by Reynolds. I listened to that on a long car trip, but man, I'm missing huge chunks of it in terms of understanding it. So I haven't talked about it on my channel at all, because I want to physically read that one before I talk about it. And one of the things I have found, though, is sometimes short stories work a little bit better, and you can pause them or stop them in the car, at least, when you want to just have a break or do something else. And then you're not like interrupting a huge plot of some sort.
I found with short stories, I haven't listened to, well, I don't read a lot of short stories full stop, although I'm trying to address that shortcoming. But on the few collections excuse me, that I've listened to on audiobook, I've had to make it a deliberate policy to pause it for 5-10 minutes between stories, because otherwise just run into each other. And
Yeah.
particularly as me being impatient, I'm listening to it on like 1.5 speed or something, and so they tend to kind of run into each other a bit. So I kind of go and listen to some music for 10 minutes, kind of insert a pause in order to kind of reset for the next one.
So do you tend to listen to books a little bit faster?
Yeah, because I get really impatient with most narrators are painfully slow for me, and I can read much faster. If I was racing them, I would be reading well ahead of them in the physical book, because obviously you can read with your eyes, you can scan sentences much faster than you can say them out loud. And so routinely, 1.6 times is my normal speed of listening, and then I adjust that up or down a bit depending on, sometimes 1.6 is a bit too quick, and 1.5 is better, but sometimes I've listened to 1 or 2 books, not many, but 1 or 2 on double speed, because they're so ponderous as a narrator that they're really taking the time. So I'm probably like being completely dismissive of their art, the art of the narration, and it is part of the package.
Yes.
The narrator can make a huge difference to your enjoyment. Yeah, absolutely.
And so there's a difference there in terms of reading. You are the director of everything, but the person who is reading it to you is putting their flavor into it as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it can make a huge difference. Some narrators, not all narrators are created equally, I guess is what I'm saying. Some of them, like actually you mentioned Alistair Reynolds. I don't know if it's the same narrator in North America, but in the UK it's a guy called John Lee. And
I can't remember.
He's got a very, to me anyway, lots of people love his narration, so whatever works. But for me, it's quite dry and not terribly expressive, and it can be a bit of a, if the books weren't so good, it might be a bit of a boring listen. So he in particular is quite slow, so I turn him up. Actually, it is an acquired taste, and by the time I've finished rereading / listening to the Revelation Space and other Reynolds books with him as the narrator, I kind of got used to him. It was fine. But Peter Kenny, for example, does the culture books here in the UK at least, and he's great. And there are others that have very expressive voices, and they do it like you would as a parent when you're reading a story. You do the different voices for the different characters, and which is a little bit childish to say, but it does make a real difference. They're doing a performance. They're not just reading it; they're performing it, and that I think is an extra that you get with listening to an audiobook. That you as you say, you're providing the voices to the extent that you do that yourself. When you're eyeballing a book.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at a few comments here. I was a teacher, and one of the things that we would do is if we had dyslexic or other problems, is we would have audiobooks and the book in front of them to try to encourage them to learn a little bit more, or to be able to get past the dyslexia.
And I think this is a really great point, actually, just to expand on that a second, because another way of phrasing the question you had in the title is do audiobooks count? Do they count as books?
Yes,
do they count as consuming the book? And I think if this is a sort of a narrow point, but it's one that I think is probably overlooked, and it sort of goes to what Jake is saying there, is if you say that they don't count, then you're effectively excluding a bunch of people from the enjoyment of, you're not really excluding them because they can do what they like, but you're somehow diminishing their experience of reading, of consuming a book, as not proper or not the real thing. And I think that's unnecessary and a little bit. It seems like a strong term to say ableist, but I think there's an element of that as well.
I think that for me, at least, that multitasking question is the big one. I find that I can really focus in on reading in the book. I have a hard time listening to a book without doing something. And sometimes you actually do get carried away with the book itself and lose track of what you're doing out here too. I don't know if you've ever taken a wrong turn while you're running or something like that, because you've been really into your book.
Definitely. Yeah, and on the flip side, I've sometimes realised that I've zoned out for a few minutes. Hang on a minute, I've no idea what's going on in this book, and I have to rewind it. There's an old term, rewind it, showing my age. To a few minutes before to the start of the chapter to kind of zone back in again. But it's okay.
Be kind, rewind.
Yeah.
Once the brain knows a language, it can absorb a story. So the sense we use is the choice of conduit. But once the brain absorbs the meaning, isn't that all reading? Or is reading eyes to page? I think that's the two definitions of reading, right? One is eyes to page. One is the cognition of what you've consumed.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we prepare to take in a book, we're priming ourselves to interpret and decode a story, whether audiovisual or tactile.
100%. I think I agreed with that, Tom.
Yep. I guess Captain Finity is having some popcorn with us.
Oh, it's popcorn.
Oh,
okay.
He's reading. Well done.
Well, I hope you have the sound turned off then to make it pop.
We have hi from the Bionicle fan. Welcome. When reading silently, a phenomenon that astounded contemporaries of Francis Bacon, you hear your own voice in your head. Hence, all reading is audio.
That's a really great point.
Yeah,
I do, certainly when I'm reading. Yeah.
My wife used to read a lot of books out loud to our children too on long trips, and they loved it. I mean, the human quality of the voice of I don't know. I think it's some ways soothing as well. There's an emotional component to it. Believe it or not, I'm not a huge fantasy fan, but she read the whole Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit to them on some of our long trips.
When it's just reminded me back when audiobooks were physical assets and not something that you just streamed. I remember borrowing Lord of the Rings from my local library as a kid in like a suitcase of cassette tapes. It was an enormous great big pack of tapes.
It was cassettes.
The cassette tapes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And some people won't know what that is.
Yeah, right. Listen to your grandparents. Yeah, well, they're making a bit of a resurgence actually. So
I heard that too.
They're the new vinyl. Yeah, cassettes are the new thing. People making mixtapes and God knows what else too. Straight back to the 80s.
Well, there's something about the magnetic recording that is actually pretty pure. Almost, we're going into a different topic.
Yeah. Different topic.
Only difference is the voice of the narrator. Then the performance matters. That's connecting with the hearing your own voice in your head. Yeah. Eyes and ears. People saying hello to each other. Yeah. Let's see here. J.C. Bray's narration of Star Trek Troopers was awesome. Stephen Fry's Hitchhikers and Sherlock Holmes are extremely well done. Oh, there's a podcast out now too of someone reading Sherlock Holmes and doing an awesome job of that series. I tend to listen to podcasts going to bed. And then I know how fast I've fallen asleep because of where I have to go back to for the next day.
I used to be a big podcast listener. That's what I used to do when I was out running. I had a few particular favorite podcasts I would just listen to, go through their entire back catalogue. But that fell by the wayside as I realised that I could be listening to science fiction audiobooks instead.
So do you think you're James Earl Jones or Stephen Fry?
I think I have to be Stephen Fry, just for the accent. Right?
That's quite a compliment for both of us, I think. If you want to absorb a book while doing another task or task, there's audiobooks, but automatically the brain cannot absorb the way you could sitting down, distracting multiple inputs.
There's an element to that, as we were talking about, I think.
Yeah. In education, when we would talk about multitasking, it really isn't doing things at the same time. It's a very fast change that you're changing back and forth, monitoring.
Time slicing, yeah.
And so that there's many brains that really aren't built to do that well. And even if you do it well, you're still missing that fragment somewhere in there as you do it. And I think that's, for me, that's the argument, is the multitasking problem is where my cognition of what I'm reading is affected.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see what else we got here. Oh, they're talking about something else going on there. Yeah. You can just as easily not really consume a printed book If your eyes glaze over the words and you're not paying attention, personal discipline. I found
I think that's really true. And for me, it's if
yeah,
I've got this bloody thing to hand, and I'm, particularly as I'm semi-obsessed with my YouTube stats, I'm constantly checking them or constantly checking something else or whatever. It's like, no. And actually, I found that I almost have to put the phone in a different room, so
yeah.
it's completely out of reach, and then focus on the reading. I don't do that as often as I should, honestly, but that is the solution to the problem.
It's easy to go, I'll read a chapter, then I'll check my phone. I'll read a
Yeah,
chapter, I'll
right.
check my phone, right? And that breaks it up like crazy.
Yeah, it does a bit.
Yeah. It is a discipline. Both,
Yeah.
I would say both of them are a discipline.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I found that when I was doing a lot more computer work and phone type things, that I didn't have that attention span that I really wanted, that I used to have as a kid when I was reading. And I worked hard at just trying to put those things aside when I retired, and just be with a book. And it came back. If people think that they've lost the attention span, I think that can be learned. It can come back again.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they'll expand
They do.
on that.
They do.
They do?
Later.
Further
Yeah.
down here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Tactile pleasure. Yeah. I mean, you and I.
Oh,
all our books.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm surrounded by them. I very much, my preference is to read the physical book. Otherwise I wouldn't have, literally thousands of them. But as I said before, the audiobook is a means to an end for me. It just means I can stuff a couple of extra books into a month that I wouldn't otherwise have the time to read.
Do you tend to have the book that you are listening to still in your library there?
I nearly always, but not 100% of the time, I'm listening to a book that I have a physical copy of. Yeah. And quite often it's one that was on my planned TBR for the month. So it's like not that that's a rigid thing particularly, but it's a way of ensuring that I get through what I plan to get through, if I can get through one or two of those. But it's not always available, depending on the age of the book. And sometimes, I let myself roam free for audiobooks and just choose something that I've been meaning to get to for a while that I think I can probably safely listen to rather than read with my eyes.
Yeah. Here, I'll just try and see if I can hit his reasons here. That voice in your head. Let's see down here. Thank you for numbering these for me. My mind often wanders as I'm analyzing what I've read, thinking about things entirely, and I need to be able to return to a previous page or paragraph. That's me too. I don't mind going back, or if there's something I remember from earlier in the book that I want to refer to. Because we're doing what we do here, I often just take a picture of a page if I see something that looks interesting, potentially to talk about in the future on the podcast.
Well, one downside of audiobooks, particularly, I notice this particularly in Alistair Reynolds' books, because he often has a date or a year at the beginning of a chapter. And whilst they do read that as part of the narration, 10 pages in to a chapter, I've forgotten which thread we're in, and if I was reading a physical book, I'd easily be able to go back and check, and there's no real easy way to do that on an audiobook, so I kind of have to try to figure it out as you go. But
even the construction of the book, sometimes they have parts or things like that too. And last one here from Dennis. I'm finding I'm filling up my books with yellow stickies, marking places of cool turns of phrases or information I need to check later. I've taken to books that are more academic. I'll do my highlighting and some of those sort of things in there to displease whoever gets them in the future. But when it's my fiction books, that's when I take pictures, usually of something I find interesting.
Yeah, no, I always admire people that not physically annotate as in write or highlight, but that you see people have like a forest of post-it notes sticking out of their books, and I just fair play to you. But I think if I tried to do that, I'd only read one book a month, and maybe I would have a deeper well, in fact I'm sure I would have a deeper reading experience if I did, and maybe it's better to read 12 books deeply than it is to read 100 plus less deeply, but that wouldn't work for me.
All right, let's see if there's any other ones I'm going to highlight here. I'm going to have to move on, but
there's one from Mark there, 855 from Odargu.
There's Marco, you said?
Just his name's Mark, but it's Odargu. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. This one? I don't think it makes a difference how you consume a book. My only issue is that if you listen to one, then just say that it's misleading or otherwise perhaps discouraging.
So, technically it's true, but I think really who cares? And why do you care if I've listened to a book or read it with my eyes? And as I said before, whilst it's true that I'm listening to a book at the time and not reading it with my eyes, if I'm listening to an audiobook, 4-6 months down the line, if someone asks me if I've read such and such a book, I'm going to say, yeah. I'm not going to stop and say, oh, I listened to that one. I just read it.
Yeah.
And it's not an intention to mislead anyone. I literally don't see why it would matter.
Do you ever think that you need to make a note of something that you've just listened to because you want to talk about it later on? Or is it just your memory? You just go by your memory?
So again, back to my point about being more organized and admiring people that do that. So the way that I manage my thoughts on a particular book is I try to write my review, for want of a better term, pretty soon after I've read it, like the day or the day after. I don't always do that. I'm about a week behind on my reviews for June, for example. But and if I have left it a little while, then I sometimes have to kind of flick through the book a little bit and remind myself what was going on. But that's usually enough of a prompt.
Yeah. One of the things, I work for a charity where we have donations of books and then we sell them later on. And one of the things I hate is when I get a book, and we get textbooks as well, that have 1,000 stickies in it, because I got to remove each one before it moves on. All right. I think we've kind of caught up with most of the questions here. I think we're both saying, oh, go ahead.
Well, there's one from Seth there just before 9. Yeah.
Okay. Whether listening to an audiobook fits some dictionary definition of reading or not, I'm not thrilled with some kind of elitist thinking that makes listening a lesser thing.
I think that's where I am. It's unnecessary. And
I agree. As I said, multitasking is a thing that I get hung up on, but I think the form of media consumption is the same in terms of, especially, we talked about how it lights up different parts of your mind from an MRI. They're actually the same parts for that. Now, of course, a movie is something completely different. It's an adaptation
form.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so you would also mentioned that you had listened 1.6 times perhaps in speed. Is it still faster to read a book than to listen to a book at that speed?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think so. Yeah. And potentially it's a fault of mine that I read too quickly, in a traditional sense with my eyes. It's not true to say that I skim read or scan read, but I am, I think anyway, a fast reader, not as fast as some, but a fast reader. And I think sometimes to my detriment. I think if I again would have a deeper experience reading the book if I slowed down a little bit, but I just can't. That's just my habit of many years. So that's just the way it goes. Which is why I can quite happily reread a book, because I've only retained about 20% of what happened in it, and it's almost a new experience again.
Yeah, I find that different books require different speeds. The ones that I call popcorn reads or entertainment type reads, they can go fast. They're the page turners, you call them usually.
Yeah, right.
But then there's the dense books. So you were talking about Neuromancer. I could not read that one fast.
No, I didn't. I couldn't either, I don't think.
Yeah. This is true, but I've never done it user unfriendly. You can mark ebooks with notes. And you can highlight them too. All right. Do you read with ebook, or do we ebooks?
I went through a Kindle phase when not long after they first came out, and the risk of attracting the attention of the authorities, I had quite a library of not wholly legal ebooks which someone gave me, and so I made myself I was plowing through those, but I kept breaking the damn things, and when I broke the third one, I thought, okay, this is getting expensive. And anyway, I come to the conclusion by that stage I preferred the heft of a physical book. They are super convenient if you want to take 15 books away on holiday with you,
Right.
and it's great. But now I just like, okay, well, I guess I'm taking a carrying bag full of books with me on holiday. That's okay.
I tried hard. I mean, I'm not. I like the sort of trying to adapt to new technology as much as possible. But this is, say, maybe 15 years ago already. Tried it, and it just. I found that it was more distracting, even if it was a Kindle. I still was distracted by the medium. Paper is just the book itself in your hands and the tactile feel of it just made it different for me.
Yeah.
But of course, as you said, on holiday, train ride, or something like that, it is convenient to be able to have as many books as you want, or just be able to download a book right away.
Yeah, I've just remembered something else that which did bug me about a couple of the audiobooks that I read, which is if the narrator mispronounces something,
Oh,
and does it consistently throughout the book, particularly if it's a word that's used often in the book, it drives me absolutely insane and really drags me out of the story, and I find it jarring. And there was one particular book. It was one of Gareth Powell's. I can't remember which one it was. It doesn't really matter. But it was done so often and with so many different words, I began to suspect that the narrator might not actually be a human. I was wondering if it was an AI narrator, and it isn't, as far as I can tell. I did go to as far as looking, but the narrator, she egregiously mispronounced words. She was referring to an enormous city as a mega city, right? So that's a common term, but she was pronouncing it megacity. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense.
Sound like an artificial intelligence.
Right. It's the sort of mistake that would make. And I don't know why it wasn't picked up in sort of post-production in the edit. I don't know why there wasn't somebody kind of standing over and going, actually, you need to do that bit again, because that's not a word. And there were a few like that, and it's sort of petty of me to make a point of mentioning it, but that goes to the kind of quality of the narration.
How do you feel about AI narration? Like you can do that with articles or anything, right?
About the same way as I feel about the AI writing books, really. I'm sure you can, but it's probably not going to be very good. I'd rather there was a human with that depth of emotion and nuance of character reading the book than I think there's an uncanny valley aspect to, and certainly at the moment, maybe it will improve to the point where you really can't tell, and then it's probably the end of everything. But I think there's just an element of it's not quite right. You can kind of tell, I think.
But the interesting thing to me is, once again, it gives an accessibility too, for, say, a blind person or someone in those shoes to be able to do that. Just like there's an accessibility now to speak your text into your phone and send it instead of having to type it out, or those sort of things too.
Yeah, and I think particularly for for vintage books, which are never going to get an audiobook narration, maybe that's the thing, that you could stomach particularly if there was no other way for you to consume the book, then an AI narration might do the job for you. And they will only get better, I'm sure. But as Tom says here, the AI has no idea what it's saying. It's just it's not reading it. It's parroting it.
Yeah.
By rote, and I think it's all machine behavior.
Yeah. I'm just going to back up to a few more comments here. Thank you for your time. By the way, people, we're going to, start to move towards wrapping up here. I don't want to take too much of Jon's time here. This is his evening. The only thing with a print book is it's easier to notice syntactical or prose choices than in audio, for me anyway. So if you're into that, it may be a downside to audio. What do you think?
There are definitely examples. Stars My Destination, for example, or Tiger Tiger by Alfred Bester, that's got some visual tricks, particularly towards the end of the book, with the way that the page is laid out, which you totally wouldn't get on.
Right.
In fact, I think I did listen to it on audio, but you just don't get on audio because it doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure they even tried. So that you don't get, obviously.
There's some sort of a name for that too. I think it's
Yeah, there is.
graphical
I don't know what it is. Yeah.
font or something, or type. There's a question here for you, John. Is your preference for hard copy due to being a Luddite?
Yeah,
Thanks, you're
absolutely.
user friendly.
Yeah, I think that's right.
There's
Yes,
a
true.
touch of Luddite in me too as well. um,
Getting old.
well, it's what you grew up with. I don't think I have any other ideas or thoughts on the topic, except bottom line, I've never listened to an audiobook yet. But I am
Okay.
so glad that they are there as an option as my eyes grow worse. I want stories. I have to take
I think that's it.
drops for pressure in my eyes. It's to try to prevent macular degeneration. But I look forward to, if I can make it into my 80s and 90s and have eye trouble, there's going to be so much available to me by that time in terms of this area.
And I think Seth nailed it there at the end there, is I want stories. And I think that's
Yeah.
it, is we just want to experience what the author has offered by way of a tale. And if we're doing it with our eyes, with our fingers, or with our ears, it's all the same. It's all gravy. I don't know why there's the debate that there is when we're contributing it here, I suppose, but it's like it's just a story. And
Hopefully we're debunking it a bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Mispronunciation of head. I don't know about that one. I'm not going to go there, I think.
I'm not sure how many different ways there are to mispronounce that. It's pretty unclear.
This person's pretty clear in their opinion. And here it was Tom, what you're referring to, that has no idea what it's saying. It's just simply trying to have
it's
an algorithm to combine words.
Yeah. He also went to Shul, so that's a movie that we watched with my kid.
I can remember for the vast majority of my life, my favorite author, I was mispronouncing his name until I started meeting some of my UK friends here. It was John Wyndham instead of Wyndham, and Gloucester instead of Gloucester, or those sort of terms. So it's about also knowing the language of the country of origin of a person.
Well, this is slightly off topic again, but also your eyes play tricks on you, and particularly if it's not a familiar word, you sort of process it as in bulk, as a group of letters, rather than spelling it out in your head. So, referring, you talked about the culture earlier on. I did a video actually almost 2 years ago now, but it's been boosted by the fickle gods of the algorithm over the last few months. I get a lot of comments kind of taking me up on the fact that I pronounced a particular made-up word incorrectly, because I inserted an L where there is no L, and it was Idiran, and I kept pronouncing it as Ilderan, because that's how I'd read it for 30 years. And I thought, when I went, no, they're wrong, it's got an L in it. When I went back to look at the books, I went, no, there's no L. There's no L. I've totally made that up. And so it's funny how your brain just processes stuff.
By the way, congratulations. I'll just say here with the public here, you've reached 10,000 subscribers. That's
Thank you
awesome.
very much.
I'm so happy that people are finding you.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I talked about this one yet. If I do get an audiobook, I read the book at the same time. Okay, there's that example.
Interesting.
If I get distracted, both with listening and reading, so this helps center the mind more on the story, plus it's quicker.
Oh, interesting. So you're listening at the same time as reading.
Yeah, I think you were saying that that's probably not quicker for you, at least, that the listening would slow you down then.
Well, I've never timed it, so I don't actually know. I think certainly if I listen to it on its intended speed, then that would absolutely be slower than reading it, or at least I would need to slow my reading down a lot to match. But because I don't listen to it at the default speed, I have it on, as I said, 1.5 or 6 usually. Yeah, maybe that would be about the same, as my physical readings. But I don't know. I've never tested it.
You get AI narration built into the Kindle. It's great if you have visual issues. And I think that this is perhaps even, I've tried a little bit of that just to see what it's like, with other people who have to do that.
Really, is it an AI narration or is it text to speech? I know it's a nuance, but it's.
I would think it's text to speech from when I used to do it about 10 years ago. Yeah. But because AI really wasn't around 10 years ago in terms of this sort of thing.
No.
I don't know if someone knows that the Kindle now is using AI or whether it's text to speech. Okay.
I think everyone was mispronouncing Elric of Melniboné.
Heed instead of head.
Right, got it. Okay.
Oh, yes. I had to look that one up multiple times before I actually said it in a video.
Yeah. Yeah. I got it right first time, but entirely by luck. And no kudos to me for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, you know what? Maybe we should wrap this up. As I said, don't want to take you away from too many things here this evening for you.
Thank you.
Oh, you know what? I'll just get the one more comment in. Narrated by Zelazny. Of all the audiobooks, you'd probably be most interested in that. Do you ever listen to books that are narrated by the authors themselves?
I don't know if I have or not. I don't think so. I don't think so. Adrian Tchaikovsky these days has narrated at least a couple of his audiobooks. I think he did Service Model, for example. But I didn't listen to that. I read the physical book.
So, it really depends on the author, right? In terms of whether they are great at public speaking or in terms of narrating their own story.
Yeah, it doesn't follow necessarily that they'll be any good at narrating, I think.
Well, I know that Malcolm Gladwell, I think, has done a few of his books in that way, but his are more idea-based type of things. People who've done podcasts who write books tend to do their own audio narration as well. So anything that you want to, there's a great video they just did on the culture in terms of the politics of the culture from E&M Banks. That's just out today. Anything that you want to promote for your channel?
Well, yeah, that is the latest of several videos on the culture books by E&M Banks, and I was intrigued. Somebody had pointed me to an essay that he wrote, Ian Banks, that is, in the early 90s, or about 10 years before he popped his clogs, and he expounds at great length about what was in his mind when he was writing the stories, and kind of what he had in the reason why it's set up the way that it is, and what he was how he'd thought through the kind of potential challenges, and that range from the political setup, which was the topic of the video that I posted earlier today, but also the post-scarcity element of the culture and how that would work, and why the mines, and what special circumstances. It's kind of a whole range of quite a long essay. I found fascinating to hear from the horse's mouth directly. So so that was the first of what probably be 2 or 3 videos that I make based on his own thoughts about the setting.
So there's more.
I think there will be more. Yeah.
All right. And I just recently got back from a road trip where I picked up a few books. Also drove up what was a snowmobile trail using something called side-by-side, driving up through mud and mosquitoes and stuff like that, and happened to see a bear along the way as well. On road trip. Yeah, so I'll include a little bit of a travel vlog with that coming up.
Okay, awesome. Well, you didn't get eaten. That's good for all of us.
Oh, they were brutal in that area. I don't know if you've had mosquitoes like we would have in northern Manitoba. You can see them. They're just swarming around you like...
The closest we have to that is midges up in the Highlands of Scotland, which are, I think, strictly speaking, not mosquitoes, but they're a similar sort of beast in that you get eaten alive if you're out at a certain time of day.
Yeah, sometimes I think we've had those type, and sometimes we call them no-see-ums because they're so small.
Right, that's it. Yeah.
But yeah, and horse flies are another really bad one here.
Yeah.
But we don't need to talk about that now. No, thank you so much for joining me, Jon.
Yeah, likewise, Richard. Good to speak to you as always. And hello to everyone else. And I will talk to you soon. Yeah, and until next time, hey, everyone, keep reading. I don't care whether you're listening or using your eyeballs. Read, touch, whichever. Exactly.
All right. Thank you, Jon.
All right. Thanks very much. Bye.